Okay, now, this is where it starts to get tricky, okay? In Deuteronomy chapter 22, how do you take the law from back then to the 21st century? How do you take the Mosaic law and apply it to today? How does it fit the Mosaic law? How do you go from the back then, 1400, 1300 BC, how do you go to the 21st century AD? How do you make that 3,000-year jump then? How do you go from back then till now? Let me just give an illustration of this on women. Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5 says this, on women and pants. Should women wear pants? Deuteronomy 22, verse 5 says this, a woman must not wear men's clothing. Pants, the man wears the pants, the family. Pants are men's clothing. Women should not wear men's clothing, so women shouldn't wear pants. Now, let me just give you an example of that. We got back from Israel, and I got my first job teaching in a Bible college in Bristol, Tennessee, and I loved it down there. And so my wife, I was working at the school during the week. To be honest, I was making $5,000 working 80 hours a week, and that's not much money. And so what I do is I do on the weekend, I do preaching and stuff like that. We were youth group sponsors at church and stuff. My wife, she was an English major in college, but we got there, and there was this large church, probably 2,000 member church, and a lot of the big churches have schools associated with them. And so this pastor was over this school, and so the pastor read this verse from Scripture that said, a woman must not wear men's clothing. And he said, pants are men's clothing, therefore all the girls that went to the school had to wear skirts and pants, or skirts. They could not wear pants. My wife was teaching there, and so that meant what? She had to wear a skirt all the time. Now, my wife, to be honest with you, the first probably years that I dated her, we were back in the early 70s, late 60s kind of thing, and so therefore all the girls wore blue jeans. I wore blue jeans. I barely saw her in a dress before we got married. And, So anyways, so now she's got to wear a dress every day to work. And she was an English major, so they had her teaching, what was she teaching? Algebra? She was an English major. Algebra. She was a gym teacher. She's a gym teacher. She came home one day saying, this girl slid into second base. Now, what's the problem when you slide into second base and you're wearing the thing called culottes and stuff? This girl ripped her legs all up. My wife came home saying, just shaking her head, said, this girl's going to have scars on her leg for the rest of her life because she was, she didn't have pants on to slide into first base. Yeah, Hannah.
It's a little bit stupid. I mean, the men's clothing is what you find in the men's section of the store.
Okay, yeah.
And the women's clothing is what you find in the women's section of the store. If it's pants, they're girl pants.
Okay, well, all right. Let's push this a little. So my wife has to wear a dress all the time. We're youth group sponsors, okay? So what do good Christian people do? We go out bowling, right? So we got the youth group out bowling. So my wife knows how to bowl fairly well. And so my wife goes up, grabs the ball and stuff. She runs down there and pitches the ball and stuff. She's got a skirt on. All of a sudden, man, her dress flips up. And it's like, holy cow, now keep it down. I got these, 16, 17-year-old kids here, keep it down, It's just like, holy cow, we don't want any free shows on here. So anyways, I kind of pull her aside and I give her this thing about, you can't bowl like that anymore. It's too reveal stuff. So then my wife has to go up and bowl like this, She goes up and throws the ball down. I won that day. That's one way to get it done. But anyways, the problem was, I always told her, I paid that pastor's wife $50 to see her snow ski in a dress. Wouldn't that be funny? It was going downhill. Anyways, was he taking Deuteronomy 22:5 and applying it to today? Now, by the way he applied it was kind of crazy. Yeah, I think all of us would acknowledge it was absolutely crazy. By the way, did my wife wear a skirt for that whole year? Actually, 2 years. Did she wear a skirt for those 2 years? The honest truth is she did. Question, can we fit into different cultures? That's a different culture than we're used to, okay? And so they were very strict on this, and so my wife wore a thing. The same way, when I was a Mennonite, I went to a Mennonite church and I had to preach on Father's Day, and they told me that the Mennonites don't wear ties because they think the ties are worldly. Actually, I think that's good. So that's why I want to wear a tie. No, actually, I had to teach for 22 years with a tie wrapped around my throat and stuff. I couldn't stand it. So when I swore I'd never wear one again. But anyways, but no, when I went to the Mennonite church, did I go with the King James Version? Because that's what they accepted, a King James Version. So I'm saying is when you're in different cultures, when you're in Israel, you put a kippah on your head, you know what I'm saying? When you're in different cultures, you fit in. And so my wife wore a dress for 2 years there, and it's no big deal, okay? Those are minor things. But did we disagree how the pastor interpreted the scriptures there? Yeah, we disagreed with how he interpreted the scripture there, but he was the pastor of the church, and so you fit in and things. Now, how do you go from the back then to now? We all have the sense of that wasn't right. Let me read the rest of this verse to you. So then do we say this verse is stupid? It's not talking about pants. By the way, what did guys wear back then? By the way, do we know what men and women wore back then? Do we know that for sure? The answer is the Ben Hassi image thing. We've got pictures of people. And did women wear like robes down to their ankles? Did guys wear robes down here? So guys wore skirts. So what does that mean? We all got to start wearing, we're going to dress just like they dressed? Okay, that's why the guys, they said, has anybody ever heard this? You gird up your loins and stuff. Basically, you take up your garment and you tuck it in your belt because when you're running, you don't want to trip over this crazy robe that's around. And they wear these heavy robes and stuff, and so you gird them up, and that's the way men. Now, do we have to dress the same way they dressed? By the way, it's part of the way they dress because of the environment that they live in. Yeah, and we live in a different environment, so you can't go directly doing these things. And so, by the way, is this really what this is talking about? Let me read. So then you say, well, this verse is irrelevant to us. And just throw it out. Is it really irrelevant to us? Let me read the verse to you. See how you would apply it. It says this, a woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wear women's clothing. For the Lord your God detests anyone who does this. What is this really talking about? Yeah, is it fairly clear? I had a friend at another school where I taught and stuff, and he used to put balloons in certain parts of his body and wear nylons and stuff, and he used to go to the mall, walk around the mall. He liked the way people would look at him and stuff like that. Was he a little bit? Yeah, he was. But he was a friend of mine and stuff. Is that more what this verse is talking about? Okay, that's what this verse is talking about. It's not talking about pants versus skirts. So how do you go from the back then till the now? This passage is talking about what? The differentiation between the sexes. I think Hannah hit it right on when you said, you go there, are women's pants different than men's pants? As far as, yeah, okay, so, you work with that. The real issue is the differentiation of the sexes, that there not be this confusion of the sexes. But by the way, we live in America. Do we confuse everything? Yeah, we kind of like it, right? But this is no, male, female, separate things, stuff. Well, this is a bigger question, and this one's really tricky. What is the impact of culture on the law? What is the impact of culture on the law? When I was young, I thought God came down on Mount Sinai, and God said, I am God, here is my law, wham, bam, this is my law. This is the way I want it done, this is the perfect law of God, and this is it. Totally ignoring culture, God says, this is how I want this world to work, and just came down and said, this is. Does God in his law take account for culture? And so what I'm wanting to suggest to you here is there's much more of an interactivity now that I see between culture and law. And we'll show some examples of that. The king was to involve himself in writing the law and making copies of the law. Do we have a king today? No, we don't, okay? We threw off King George and stuff. We don't have a king. And so the king was to write a law. Is he supposed to write a law, make a hand copy for himself? He doesn't have to. He's got it on his BlackBerry or what iPad. Anyway, so, okay.